Most of the manga I've gotten into has a strong start that hooked me on the series and encouraged me to continue. Occasionally the series will actually be good, but just as often it will sink into a mire of mediocrity as it progresses. Rarely though, there's a series with a weak start that will improve to the point of greatness, and Soul Eater is one such series. Today, a review of Soul Eater, which has just come to an end after almost a decade of releases. Soul Eater is set in a world that's essentially Earth shifted into a fantasy plane. You still have all the countries and major cities in the same places, but you also have a panting sun, a maniacal moon, and a number of fantastic locales that exist nowhere in the real world. In this world, Death is a quirky Shinigami who decided to create a school to train kids how to devour the souls of the evil for him. Students are split into pairs. One goofs off, and the other yells at them. Though I'm joking, that's actually surprisingly accurate. Anyways, one is a living weapon, or in other words a human who can transform into a weapon, and the other is a Meister who wields the weapon. The goal of the pair is to devour 99 evil human souls and 1 witch soul to upgrade the weapon into a Death Scythe, which essentially just means the weapon becomes more powerful and that they can be wielded by Death himself. Now, since Death already has 8 Death Scythes at the start of the story and doesn't really need any more weapons, I can only assume the logic for becoming one runs something like this. Why is that scythe so big and pointy? Oh, the better to eat you with, my dear. Nom 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 nom. Anyways, moving on, the story follows several pairs of students as they seek to obtain/become Death Scythes. But that gets sidetracked pretty quickly, and that's when the story starts to get interesting.
Can't handle us, so cool, baby, scandalous. I'll show you.
This story follows 3 sets of Meisters and their weapons. We have Black Star, a hyperactive loudmouth with all the common sense of a drunk squirrel, and the overpoweredness of all his shonen brethren, his quiet and responsible partner Tsubaki, who can transform into a variety of Japanese weapons, Death the Kid, the OCD son of Death, who has an obsession with symmetry, and his happy-go-lucky partners Liz and Patty, who both transform into guns, and lastly Maka and Soul, the most normal of the pairs. Sure, Maka's a bit bookish and Soul's a bit impulsive, but they have nothing on the eccentricities of the other pairs. Soul is also the only weapon aiming to become a Death Scythe that's actually a scythe to begin with. With regards to the character development, I can honestly say I've never appreciated it more than in this series. Initially, Black Star and Kid's quirks are overdone to the point of being obnoxious, and Maka and Soul are painfully generic. But, as the series goes on, Kid's quirks become less blatant, and Maka and Soul gain a bit of madness to their character. And Black Star actually becomes a bit more mature. Or maybe his immaturity just rubbed off on me. As I already mentioned, this story has a fairly slow start, and that coupled with the fact that a few of the characters start out as annoying twits and brats makes it hard to get into the series. That being said, when the story does start to pick up at around chapter 15 or so, things start to get really interesting. Intrigue, betrayal, and madness all become prominent features of the series, and it becomes more fun to watch the antagonists scheme, manipulate, and backstab each other than watching the protagonists try and defeat them. Special mention goes out to one specific witch, Medusa, who, though being weaker and having less resources than all her opponents, good and bad, often manages to come out on top through sheer cunning. Half the time I felt like rooting for her over all the other protagonists, and would have if she didn't have a thing for torturing her son. As it is, she's still easily one of my favorite villains to come out of manga. The way the series deals with madness is also very cool. Looking through a window into a character's mind as they slowly slide towards insanity makes for an interesting trip, and I think it's best done with Soul and the little demon and piano in his mind. The idea of the music of madness rather appeals to me. Also, because insanity is an ongoing issue for multiple characters in this series, it gets much better developed in this story than any other series in this genre. Lastly, I feel I should give some reference to the humor of this series, because I've seen some places that label it as a comedy series. However, from my experience, the moments in this series that made me laugh out loud were few and far between. The series does greatly benefit, though, from not taking itself too seriously, and this allows for some amusing, ridiculous moments, a la Gurren Lagann, such as Black Star grabbing laser beams, eating magic to unleash this series' equivalent of a nuclear blast, throwing away one of the moon's teeth, or you know what, pretty much anything that involves Black Star. Soul Eater has a fun story that takes a little while to get moving. Once it does get moving though, it takes off, and while it doesn't quite reach epic levels, it's certainly worth a read if you're into fantasy shonen. Overall, I give this series an 8 out of 10. If you're looking for something else similar, I would suggest Rave Master, another fantasy shonen manga with a slow start that progressed to greatness over its long run. It's a bit more of the classic swords and sorcery style fantasy than Soul Eater is, but the tone is the same. Anyways, thanks for listening. Cheers!
くず星きらめく夢の